What is going on, everyone? Welcome into Bayou Bengals football. So I wanted to talk Omar Speights. So Omar Speights, just a fantastic linebacker that LSU landed in the transfer portal. And Speights, he's been a super fun watch when I've really broke down his tape and his all-22 film. So I went into it thinking, when you watch his highlights, don't really do him justice. I remember someone posted a highlight of Omar Speights on YouTube, and I watched it, and I'm like, yeah, Speights is a really good player, but his highlights don't really give you a true grasp of how good this guy is. When you watch his all-22 tape, this is a guy that can read plays. His feet are always active. He's always in a good athletic position. So, yeah, Speights, this guy is going to be crucial to LSU's success. And like I've touched on, I like the combination of combining him with Harold Perkins. So you have a guy with experience and then a young guy who Speights can help mentor and coach and really continue to get the most out of Harold Perkins. So Omar Speights, a huge get in the transfer portal for LSU. This guy that's played a lot of football now since he's been at Oregon State since 2019. So a guy that's seen a lot of action, made an impact early for Oregon State in 2019, played in 2020, even though they just played 7 games. But every season he's been productive. He's made an impact, and he's played a huge role in Oregon State finding success defensively. So when LSU landed Omar, so I didn't really know much about Omar Speights. I remember in the winter when they landed him, I was really intrigued because I was thinking LSU, they have pieces. You add another really good linebacker, and that's just going to help put you. That could be the icing on the cake and be the missing piece to this puzzle to really put this defense over the top. Because Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, we touched on the defensive line. The defensive line is going to be really strong, but Omar Speights, the impact that he's going to bring to this LSU defense, the experience, the veteran leadership, it's all going to be crucial for this team. So let's talk Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers continues to rise up draft boards at the wide receiver position. Now the consensus number 4 wide receiver. So just as another guy who's one of the top NFL draft prospects on this LSU team. And like I've touched on, championship level teams have NFL, not just difference makers, but not just good college players, but guys that translate well to the NFL, have an NFL skill set. So Malik Nabers has all those. He has an NFL skill set at wide receiver, a guy that can play in the slot on the outside. His feet are very quick. I like his releases off the line of scrimmage. This is a guy that can get open, make catches, make contested catches, a guy that shows some leaping ability, can stretch the field vertically, adjust to the ball, make sideline catches. So Malik Nabers has got a really nice skill set, and a guy that really big. It was a fairly heavily recruited high school recruit, former 4-star. So Malik Nabers I think he is due for another big time year. You saw 1,000 yards, just 3 touchdowns. So hopefully he develops more into a red zone threat. But yeah, Malik Nabers, a talented wide receiver for LSU and should be their number 1 guy. Who emerges as the number 2 is going to be the big question. Brian Thomas, you feel, is the safe answer, but Brian Thomas, I think Brian Thomas is more of your possession underneath reliable route runner guy. I don't think Brian Thomas is necessarily, I don't think you want him to be your true I think he could be a wide receiver 2, but I just don't think he's a wide receiver 2 with upside. So hope Kyron Lacey's that guy. But yeah, you got to believe that. Say if Kyron Lacey really emerges as the upside wide receiver 2, if Brian Thomas is your strong wide receiver 3, who's kind of that possession guy, I think that would be a really nice scenario for LSU. So Malik Nabers, the go-to guy that plays in the slot and the outside. Then you got Lacey, your wide receiver number 2, who's got upside, who can give you that big playability, and then Brian Thomas, kind of the possession guy. So those 3 working in that order, in that tandem, I think will be strong for LSU's offense. So staying with the offense, Miles Frazier. I think Miles Frazier is the most underrated player on this LSU football team. Miles Frazier is so good at picking up stunts. He does a really good job of sustaining run blocks. And Miles Frazier, former transfer, I believe it was from Louisiana Monroe, and he's been just a solid piece to the LSU offensive line. Will Campbell, Emory Jones get all the accolades, rightfully so, but Miles Frazier is a really good player nonetheless, and I think he'll be in the discussion for one of the top interior offensive linemen for the 2024 NFL Draft. I think it's really interesting that LSU, so the three guys I just touched on, Omar, Speights, Malik, Nabers, and Miles Frazier, all three of these guys are a lot lower on consensus rankings than they should be. Now, Malik, actually, for my opinion, I think Malik Nabers might be my wide receiver 4, maybe 3, but I think I'd probably put him at 4 as of now, maybe 5. So in my opinion, he's about where he should. But Omar Speights is way down the list. Like, he's like the consensus 15th linebacker or something like that. And then Miles Frazier, can't even remember where he was listed on interior offensive line. I know it was outside of the top 8. So you talk about Omar Speights and Miles Frazier, two really good players who I do think have an NFL skill set that are way low on the consensus. So I guess the point I'm trying to get at is I think these are guys that are going to rise up NFL draft boards. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how Frazier and Speights play, number one, and then number two, how high they eventually get ranked for the 2024 NFL draft at their respected positions. So I think that's what's deceiving about LSU is you look. So Malik Nabers is a top 5 at his position. Mason Smith, top 5 at his position. Actually, the number 1 ranked guy for defensive tackles right now. So you look LSU. Even though they do have some guys ranked fairly high for the NFL draft, I think a lot of guys are ranked lower. Even Jaden Daniels, I forget where he's ranked at, but he's outside of the top 5 quarterbacks. Could Jaden Daniels work his way into a top 5 quarterback? I think it is a little bit of a long shot, but I don't think it's necessarily crazy. So if you're talking LSU players in where they are and where their draft rank is in retrospect to the consensus, I think multiple guys there are a lot lower on. I think Malik Nabers probably at 4. I think 4 is actually probably perfect right now for Malik Nabers. But this year, I think he has a chance to really move up. And I think Malik Nabers, I've kind of compared him to Zay Flowers, a guy that's just a guy that probably is going to make a living mostly in the slot, but does have the versatility to play on the outside. A guy that's really good after the catch, really wants to snatch the ball out of the air and get upfield. A lot of what you saw made great Zay Flowers so great, is what I see in Malik Nabers. But yeah, I mean, so LSU this year, the schedule, I mean, obviously opening up with Florida State's going to be tough, but that is a winnable game. I think they should win that game. So starting 1-0 and entering a game against Graham, starting 2-0. I think they will start 2-0. I did predict 3-0, but 2-0 seems fairly safe. And you got to believe that this team, with all the hype and all the talk, if they have that 2-0 record next to them, I think that'll give them a good boost of confidence. I think that is a strong way to start. And I think that's what Brian Kelly's thinking. Can we go actually maybe get a little greedy? I think if Brian Kelly's thinking if we start 3-0, that is just we're already in a lot better position than the year before, because when you starting 0-1 really just puts you in a big hole, because there's just not a lot of breathing room. Now with the modern era, there's still, like with the BCS era, losing 1 games hurts you a lot, but still losing 1 game in the 4-team playoff format still is a big deal too, because there's no 2-loss team has ever made the playoffs. So 1 loss, you just do not have a lot of flexibility. You just have to, not that you necessarily play tight the rest of the season, but you know that now if you're in a late fourth quarter game, you're like, oh man, if we lose this, the season's over. It's a lot more pressure riding at it, as opposed to you start at 3-0. Now you think, hey, we can play loose. If we drop 1 more game, then we still can be in the mix of it, depending on which loss it is. Say we drop a game to Arkansas or Ole Miss. I touched on those are one of the 2 games they might slip up. You drop one of those 2 games, and you should still be okay. But yeah, I mean, transfers been big for LSU. Transfers will be key. Once again this year, Zy Alexander's a corner they landed in the transfer portal. I think the secondary Secondary is going to be solid overall. I think hopefully Major Burns plays well, stays healthy. I think Major Burns is a guy who's going to be key for them just because he's a guy that, even though I don't think is going to make a lot of game-changing plays, I just think they need him to be out on the field and do some nice things. I think Greg Penn at linebacker is another guy that if he gets time, hopefully, I think the two backup linebackers, hopefully they need to be ready. Wes Weeks and Greg Penn, those guys need to be ready because you got to believe that they're probably going to try to play Perkins and Speights a lot of snaps, but you got to get those guys a breather. If one of those guys, Penn or Weeks, can get you some good, can be a good rotational guy, I think that'll be critical. I think hopefully one of the transfer guys in the defensive line emerges, whether that's Parashan, Jordan Jefferson. You really hope that, because Mekhi Wingo and Mason Smith are going to get theirs in the interior, but if Jefferson or Shand or Gilroy, if one of those guys, Gilroy was one of the recruits, he wasn't a transfer. If one of those guys can emerge this year, I think that is crucial because I think there's enough depth in high-end talent in Mekhi Wingo and Mason Smith, but high-end level play from one of the rotational guys could be a huge game changer, and that could really help them later in the season, especially down the stretch. But yeah, so SEC Media Day is coming up for LSU. I think the big question is that I wonder if Brian Kelly will get the question, are expectations getting out of hand? Because if you look at it, LSU is becoming such a popular pick to win the national championship. Well, not necessarily the most popular pick, but a fairly popular pick. So to me, you feel like expectations are kind of getting out of control a little bit. But yeah, I think for an LSU fan, you got to be excited. The Heisman odds in favor of Jaden Daniels, at least as far as the second best odds to win it. So it shows that Vegas, people are betting on it. Shows that, yeah, people are believing in this LSU team. So, yeah, I think that it's fun this time of year I think it's fun to find a team like LSU that's not really because Georgia and Alabama, it's kind of just become a little bit boring betting on them. I think it's fun to find a team like LSU that you can say, hey, LSU's got a chance to be really good and maybe win the national title. I know they've won one now. Now, I know they won about a little over 3 years ago, but it'd be cool to see a team like LSU emerge and maybe, be the team that knocks Georgia off and prevent them from winning 3 straight national titles. But yeah, more burning questions for LSU, I think. Do the OCs and the defensive coordinators continue to be really good? I think that this year, I think a lot of the assistants got kind of a free pass. I think this will be a telling year for if the offense struggles or the defense struggles, maybe the coordinators get a little more scrutiny. I think Brian Kelly was success in year one. I think that's bought him at least 1 year. So I think even if that's just one thing I've touched on. Say things really collapse this year, I think Brian Kelly, the success in year one, that bought him an extra year. So, but, I think that, I don't know, maybe not even a year. I think that did buy him a little bit of leeway, though, as far as the future goes. But yeah, for LSU, I think with the receiving core, Kyron Lacy, one of the most popular guys for a breakout candidate. I think Aaron Anderson, the Alabama transfer, I think he's got a chance to perform at a high level for him. But yeah, the offensive line, the 2 tackles, Will Campbell, Emory Jones, both those guys are going to be good. Will Campbell, I think this year you really can see him take another step, and then this time next year you're really talking about him for one of the top players in the 2025 draft, maybe a legitimate top 5 NFL draft pick. So he got a sponsorship with John Deere. That's really cool. But yeah, Will Campbell, excellent tackle for the Tigers, and Emory Jones, like people have touched on, this guy's got versatility to play, maybe move inside the interior and play guard. But yeah, I think their offense, tight end, tight end, they've really done a good job of recruiting that position. The one kid they're bringing in from Ohio, the 3-star recruit, his name escapes me at the moment, but I think he's got some upside. Pimpton, I think, will be a good player. Mac Markway is getting high praise. He's a guy who's touchdown excellent, going to be an excellent blocker. Giovanni Peterson is a guy that's been there. We'll see if he can help contribute this year. Mason Taylor, their superstar tight end. Mason Taylor, really good after the catch, makes a lot of plays. So yeah, LSU. I mean, they're if you factor in the tight end, the wide receiving core, if you factor in all the pass catchers and including what the running backs can do, Goodwin, the transfer Diggs, Josh Williams, Noah Kane. If you factor all that, they're going to be just fine in as far as receiving goes. There's going to be plenty of guys getting open. So I think that if Jaden Daniels improves as a passer, I think a lot of it is because they just have they have guys that they have numerous amounts of guys who know how to get open. I think that'll be a critical in Jaden Daniels developing as a passer. So I think that really ties into the Heisman hype for Jaden Daniels, because I think it's a lot of it banking on you got a legit go-to wide receiver. You got an NFL caliber tight end. You got running backs who know how to get open. You got a quarterback you believe is going to take a step in his passing development at year 2 of an offense in Matt Denbrock and Brian Kelly's offense. So with all those things kind of factored in, it is ingredients for you throw in a good offensive line. It's a good recipe for a really good season from a quarterback. So Jaden Daniels, with all those things, those are all really good things working for LSU. But the LSU fans, I'm in one of the Facebook chats, and I like that a lot of people the fan base is behind Jaden Daniels. It is interesting that there is some people in favor of Nussmeier. I think that is I think that is a lot of guys who, like myself included, when you get into a big game, say Jaden Daniels stays the same as last year or actually takes a step back, you got to believe that the way his skill set now, you got to believe that could really hold them back in a big game. Whether that is Georgia, maybe it is against Alabama, you got to believe that him not continuing to progress as a passer could really haunt them, because you really see that the running ability is great, but when push comes to shove in some games, you gotta make a throw. You gotta make a key, intermediate, long range throw. You gotta make it's a game on the line. You got a long 4th down conversion. Can Daniels step up in the pocket, deliver a bullet, which he can, but in a big time player step up in big time games. So in a moment like that, could Jaden Daniels come through for him? But yeah, I mean, so we'll talk the running backs. Yeah, running back is, I think the running back has kind of been forgotten about LSU. There is some question marks, but a lot of the question marks with the running back position is just, can any of these guys really emerge as a high end difference maker? Which I'm going to say no, but they have enough depth, like Goodwin, Diggs, Kane, Josh Williams. They have enough guys that are capable of doing some nice things, and like Matt Denbrock touched on, it's going to be kind of like a little bit of a committee, and they're just going to kind of ride the hot hand. So say Josh Williams has got things working as a pass catcher, he's running well between the tackles, running well outside. They're just going to keep going with Josh Williams. So to me, it's I think the committee will work pretty well for LSU, and I think they're going to get some good play out of the running back position. But it's interesting to think. I wonder what Brian Kelly's mindset is right now. You listen to him talk and you hear his why of why he coaches. It's to see men develop, see men get the most out of life, not only in football but after football, which is awesome. But I think if you're Brian Kelly, I think your mindset, I think you should be salivating at the opportunity you have in place. Like, this is, like I touched on, year 2 coaches. This is when championships can get won. it's kind of your team now. You kind of year one, you like he's touched on. You kind of it was kind of this is how we practice. This is how we game plan. This is how we get things done. Now year two, it's your team. It's the second year with your quarterback. You got some more of your recruits. You got some of you guys you wanted in the transfer portal, like Omar Speights that I touched on, Zaya Alexander, some numerous transfers. So you got some of your recruits, your transfers. It's your system now. I think you should be salivating at this opportunity with and you beat Alabama, and you have Alabama's number currently. So with all those things in place, you got to believe that if you're Brian Kelly, you got to be smelling the blood in the water, and you have to be really getting after it. And I think that you should relish an opportunity to get another shot at Georgia. And I think that you should. I think the LSU players should be very hungry and have a sour and have a bad taste in their mouth by the way that Georgia game went. Because if they made a few more plays, add Mason Smith this year, I think some things could flip and go a few more things go their way, more depth in the defensive line this year, and you got to believe that's a different ball game. Because I'm watching that game, and when you've watched football for a long time, you kind of can get a sense when a team's overmatched. I did not feel like LSU was overmatched in that game. I just thought they were outplayed, and you saw their depth was a little thin on the defensive line, hurt them. So they weren't, especially early in that game, they definitely were not overmatched by Georgia. Georgia just executed better and was the better team that day. Now, that's the thing. Like I posted in the Reddit discussion with LSU fans, how does LSU match up with Georgia? Does LSU match up with Georgia better this year? Something along those lines. And it's interesting. One guy said it best. On paper, Georgia's a better team, which I would agree. But when you think about it, a lot of things change in a year. Now LSU, that's kind of like the thing, like the thought that stays in my head that LSU is going to be similar this year to last year. But like I just said, a lot of things change within a year. Compare 2018 LSU to 2019 LSU. 2018 LSU had a lot of the same players as in 2019. But you saw Joe Burrow take another step in his development year two of an offense. Now, is Jaden Daniels going to have the type of year Joe Burrow had? Probably not, but you see the point I'm getting at. LSU, they brought in, made some changes on the offense. Now LSU this year hasn't made a lot of changes offensively, but you got to believe they've upgraded, and their offensive linemen, their talented offensive linemen, you got to improve. So you see some similarities between LSU going from their progress from 2018 to 2019. It is kind of similar from what could happen with their team this year or last year to this year. And not saying that they will become a national title contender team, but you got to feel like you saw enough last year. There was enough pieces in place, and they've added enough, and they have kept a good core nucleus in their coaching staff to really do something special. And I think I think that is a solid comparison. The 2018 team, how they improved to the 2019 team. I think that is a comparison that makes a lot of sense. So I think that's definitely something interesting to keep in mind. But yeah, LSU. The schedule is fairly tough overall. I mean, last year, it's kind of one of those games where they have one of those schedules where they have games where you want to just pencil them in for a win. Like Mississippi State, you want to just immediately pencil that in as a win. But, early in the season, Mississippi State, no slouch. Even Texas, every SEC game is unique and it's tough, and Brian Kelly's like, it's crazy. Even teams that are not having a very good year, they sell out, and it's always a tough ruckus environment at every SEC team you play. So you cannot. The point I'm trying to get at, and Brian Kelly kind of implied this, you cannot take any SEC opponent for granted, especially on the road, because it's going to be a tough, most likely a sellout environment, even if the team is not very good. But Yeah, I'm going to wrap with that. Thanks for tuning in to Bayou Bengals Football. Make sure to stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show. Till next time, peace.